The Mac Pro that was announced for pre-order, or I think it's you can go in there and buy it to your heart's content and spec it all the way up. I guess we're just continuing on part of our discussion on where Apple is these days. But as as one to do, it's a pastime, a bit of a fun thing to do to spec this thing up to the hilt. Lots of Apple fanboys do that a lot, and fangirls probably too as well, just to see how much one of these things costs. And this has come out as absolutely the most expensive thing that they've put out there. Now, granted, the 8 terabyte version is still not available, so in theory it should be even more expensive than this, but it's come out at $85,000 Australian. So I'm assuming it'd be $90,000 for the 8 terabyte version whenever that comes out. And the display, that's without the display, of course. If you want the Apple 6K display, which I'm sure is spectacular when you're looking at it.
What size is it? Do we know?
32 inch. So it's a decent sized.
Decent size if you're sitting close to it.
Yeah, exactly. And especially if you got 2 or 3 of them on the desk, right?
Oh, well, yeah. Okay, how much for just the one?
Okay, so it comes in. So there's 2 costs associated with it. Obviously, they've got 2 different versions: a standard and a nano textured one. The standard is $8,500, and the nano texture one is $10,000. Now, if you're one of these pros that mounts them on the wall or something like that you don't need to go any further. But if you're up for the stand, which is a pro stand, mind you, you're looking at.
So you don't lean them up against your Final Cut user manuals then?
That's right. That pro stand's going to hit you, set you back another $1,700. Wow. So add all of that up, I think you're into 100K territory right there for this machine. So I know you've sort of enjoyed doing this over the years in terms of speccing out these things. Is that kind of hitting the ridiculous territory, or what do you think?
Well, I hate to go back in time, but in 1999 I bought a G4, which was as specced up as you could go. I had the big drive. I think it was a 10 gig drive, and there was room in the bay for a second drive, which I then subsequently, I think a couple of years later, I put in a 27 gig drive that cost me $660.
Yeah.
And but I bought a Jazz drive, I bought a printer, I bought a scanner. I had everything for that G4 except a monitor, because I used an old G3 monitor. And that came to $4,500, and that was just about the most you could spend on a Mac, I think, and that's with accessories.
So not even in factoring in inflation, there's no way that would have been $100,000 in today's dollars.
It was max RAM, whatever max RAM was back then, maybe 2 gig. I don't know. It was max everything.
There's plenty of YouTube videos of people reviewing it and sort of putting it through its paces and all that, and like you are getting what you pay for, I guess, in terms of performance. So if you're one of those people that has to do 10 8K renders all at once, it just doesn't crack a sweat over it. It doesn't break sweat over doing any of it, whereas obviously the standard machines would probably cop out trying to do that sort of stuff. So I guess if you've got that kind of a workflow, that's fine. And if you're a big corporation, I think we said the other week, isn't it, you drop $100,000, it's probably like spending $1,000 for a personal setup.
Well, that's right. And let's face it, I mean, Hollywood's a bit like the medical world now. If it's medical grade, you just add an extra couple of zeros, and you do that the same with your Mac now, like if it's Hollywood grade. Do you have Ben, because I know you understand these things, if I was just going to go and get a basic Mac now, what would the outlay be for me to say, just be able to cut, I guess, in 4K, maybe render in 8, I don't know.
Comfortably. You'd probably want to get at least obviously one of the MacBook Pros, a 13-inch, because the 15-inch is more, we're now at a 16-inch. But the 13-inch, which would probably set you back $3,000.
So really let's say, and then I buy...
And that's not really speccing it up. So if you'd want to get like the bigger hard drive and bigger SSD and stuff.
So we get to around 5 or 6K.
Yeah, which is probably in the ballpark of what you spent originally, I guess. So
That's right. In which case, then it's actually cheaper today than it was back then.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The interesting thing though is that they've got all these options, like they've got the Mac Mini still floating around, which has been beefed up. You've still got your iMacs and stuff, but the reality is that for most people, like if they're just doing the YouTube type broadcasting or whatever, like we're doing, we can get away with you just get a laptop,
just with high definition. Are you saying? That's what you need?
Oh well, you could probably just use the base MacBook Air for that. Probably, I'm sure it wouldn't have any problems getting through it. But it's just, in a way, it's kind of spoiled for choice in a way that you've got all these. Well, not that Apple has heaps of options, but I guess the options they have available, albeit expensive, you could get away with like a base level Mac and do a lot of stuff on it. But having said that, you can do that with a Windows machine too. I'm fairly certain. So it's interesting, but is it just that they're, I guess, to put a bow on it, I guess, is that the whole thing is that Apple's been hammered for the past, 2 or 3 years for not taking care of the pros. I think with this and a couple of the other things that they've done recently, they can't say that they haven't given the pros what they wanted, because this new Mac Pro is basically so customizable that, the pro, like, all the YouTube videos I've seen of the pros reviewing it, they're all like salivating over it because they can see, oh yeah, we can do this and we can do that, and it looks beautiful. Even if you take the case off, it looks amazing. Even on the inside, all that sort of stuff. And we'll give them the benefit of the doubt that Apple didn't slip in a couple of promotional dollars underneath there.
We didn't slip in the 8 terabyte drive or something just for saying those things. But
yeah,
it's interesting. I think the other thing that maybe we can lament or celebrate, depends on how you look at it, is back obviously 20 years ago, to be a pro at home would be a pro in Hollywood, and you'd have the best, both have the same machine, and really the difference in specs would be minimal.
Yeah.
But today there's a big gap.
Yeah.
Some people are just comfortable in HD, others need 8K, some don't need any rendering at all, and others, they have to recolorize their raw, like files, who knows? So
yeah,
I guess, that's a big workflow, and you need a big machine with a big price tag.